Chapter 11. The Children of the Forest. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Lucy Burgoyne. The Children of the New Forest by Frederick Marriott. Chapter 11. "Would you have found your way to Lymington?" said Oswald, as the pony trotted along. "Yes, I think so," replied Edward, "but I must have first gone to Arnwood. Indeed, had I been alone I should have done so, but we have made a much shorter cut." "I did not think that you would have liked to have seen the ruins of Arnwood," replied Oswald. "Not a day passes without my thinking of them," replied Edward. "I should like to see them. I should like to see if anyone has taken possession of the property, for they say it is confiscated." "I heard that it was to be, but not that it was yet," said Oswald. "But we shall know more when we get to Lymington. I have not seen it for more than a year. I hardly think that anyone will recognize you." "I should think not, but I care little if they do. Indeed, who is thee to know me?" "Well, my introduction of you will save some surmises, probably, and I shall not take you among those who may be inclined to ask questions. See, there is the steeple. We have not more than a quarter of an hour's drive." As soon as they arrived at Lymington, Oswald directed the way to a small hostelry to which the keepers and verderers usually resorted. In fact, the landlord was the party who took all the venison off their hands, and disposed of it. They drove into the yard, and giving the pony and the cart in charge of the hostler, went into the inn, where they found the landlord, and one or two other people who were drinking. "Well, Master Andrew, how fare you?" said Oswald. "Let me see," said the corpulent landlord, throwing back his head, and putting out his stomach as he peered at Oswald. "Why, Oswald Partridge, as I am a born man. Where have you been this many a day?" "In the forest, Master Andrew, where there are no few chops and changes." "Yes, you have a sort of parliamentary keeper, I'm told. And who is this with you?" "The grandson of an old friend of yours, now dead, poor old Jacob Armitage." "Jacob dead? Poor fellow! As true as flint was Jacob Armitage, as I'm a born man. And so he is dead? Well, we all owe heaven a death. Foresters and landlords, as well as kings, all must die. I have brought Edward Armitage over here to introduce him to you, Master Andrew. Now that the old man is dead, you must look to him for forest meat." "Oh, well, well, it is scarce now. I have not had any for some time. Old Jacob brought me the last. You are not one of the parliamentary foresters, then, I presume?" continued the landlord, turning to Edward. "No," replied Edward, "I kill no venison for Roundheads." "Right, my sapling, right and well said. The Armitages were all good men and true, and followed the fortunes of the Beverleys, but there are no Beverleys to follow now. Cut off root and branch, more's the pity. That was a sad business. But come in, we must not talk here, for walls have ears, they say, and one never knows who one dares to speak before now." Oswald and Edward then entered with the landlord, and arrangements were made between Master Andrew and the latter for a regular supply of venison during the season, at a certain price. But as it would now be dangerous to bring it into the town, it was agreed that when there was any ready, Edward should come to Lymington and give notice, and the landlord would send out people to bring it in during the night. This bargain concluded, they took a glass with the landlord, and then went into the town to make the necessary purchases. Oswald took Edward to all the shops where the articles he required were to be purchased. Some they carried away with them, others, which were too heavy, they left, to be called for with the cart as they went away. Among other articles, Edward required powder and lead, and they went to a gunsmith's where it was to be procured. While making his purchases, Edward perceived a sword, which he thought he had seen before, hanging up against the wall among other weapons. "What sword is that?" said he, to the man who was measuring out the powder. "It's not my sword exactly," replied the man, "and yet I cannot return it to its owner or to the family. It was brought me to be cleaned by one of Colonel Beverley's people, and before it was called for the house was burned, and every soul perished. It was one of the Colonel's swords, I am sure, as there is E.B. on a silver plate engraved on it. I have a bill owing me for work done at Arnwood, and I have no chance of its being paid now, so whether I am to sell the sword or what to do I hardly know." Edward remained silent for some little while, for he could not trust himself to speak. At last he replied, "To be candid with you, I am, and all my family have been, followers of the Beverley family, and I should be sorry if the Colonel's sword was to fall into any other hands. I think, therefore, if I pay the bill which is due, you may safely let me hold the sword as security for the money, with the express understanding that if it is ever claimed by the Beverley family I am to give it up." "Certainly," said Oswald. "Nothing can be fairer or more clearly put." "I think so, too, young man," replied the shopkeeper. "Of course you will leave your name and address?" "Yes, and my friend here will vouch for its being correct," replied Edward. The shopkeeper then produced the account, which Edward paid, and giving on the paper the name of Edward Armitage, he took possession of the sword. He then paid for the powder and lead, which Oswald took charge of, and, hardly able to conceal his joy, hastened out of the shop. "Oswald," cried Edward, "I would not part with it for thousands of pounds." "I never will part with it but with my life." "I believe so," replied Oswald, "and I believe more, that it will never be disgraced in your hands. But do not talk so loud, for there are listeners and spies everywhere. Is there anything else that you require?" "No, I think not. The fact is, that this sword has put everything out of my head. If there was anything else, I have forgotten it. Let us go back to the inn, and we will harness the pony, and call for the flour and oatmeal." When they arrived at the inn, Oswald went out to the yard to get the cart ready, while Edward went into the landlord's room to make inquiries as to the quantity of venison he would be able to take off his hands at a time. Oswald had taken the sword from Edward, and had put it in the cart, while he was fastening the harness, when a man came up to the cart, and looked earnestly at the sword. He then examined it, and said to Oswald, "Why, that was Colonel Beverley's, my old master's sword. I know it again directly. I took it to Phillips, the gunmaker, to be cleaned." "Indeed," replied Oswald. "I pray, what may be your name?" "Benjamin White," replied the man. "I served at Arnwood till the night it was burned down, and I have been here ever since." "And what are you doing now?" "I'm a tapster at the Commonwealth, in Fish Street. Not much of a place." "Well, well, you stand by the pony, and look that nobody takes anything out of the cart, while I go in for some parcels." "Yes, to be sure I will. But, I say, Forester, how come you by that sword?" "I will tell you when I come out again," replied Oswald. Oswald then went into Edward, and told him what had occurred. "He will certainly know you, sir, and you must not come out till I can get him away," said he. "You are right, Oswald, but before he goes, ask him what became of my aunt, and where she was buried, and also ask him where the other servants are. Perhaps they are at Lymington as well as he." "I will